Hey, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be going over postural and lifestyle fixes for anterior pelvic tilt. So in this video, we're going to review what is anterior pelvic tilt, how do you know if you have it, and we're going to go over the postural and lifestyle fixes to help correct it. So let's review what is anterior pelvic tilt. Basically means that your pelvis is rotated too far forward where it looks like you're trying to stick your booty out, but you're really not. And if you want to find out more information about the causes for it, look into my first video as it relates to which muscles cause it and how you know if you really have it, which is just doing a simple test using a little bit of a towel and a bench. Now, if you're watching this video and you haven't seen this first video, I want you to check out that first video because you shouldn't be doing these correctives unless you confirm that you actually have anterior pelvic tilt. So you're watching this video, you know you have some anterior pelvic tilt. How do we correct it? Using postural and lifestyle fixes. Let's start with the standing posture. All right, so there's 4 things we have to consider with the standing posture. And the first is gonna be hyperextended knees. How do you know if you have hyperextended knees? Well, if your knees go all the way back where it makes your femur go a little tilted like this, you have hyperextended knees. And if you do have hyperextended knees, what that can do is, let's assume that I have a little bit of anterior pelvic tilt, and imagine that I had a super hyperextended knee. I can go back like this. Notice how it makes it worse, all right? So we have to have a proper alignment, which can then allow us to get out of anterior pelvic tilt. But if you have hyperextended knees, we're going to unlock them a little bit like this, and that ensures that our femur is vertical, right? Now, the other thing that can happen is, although you might not have hyperextended knees, you could have hip hyperextension. And what that means with those people is that the hips are forward, the torso's fine, it's vertical, and that does the same thing of bringing your hip back, which can then increase your already excessive anterior pelvic tilt. Now that can also cause some other hip dysfunctions, but the point is that if you have hip hyperextension, we're gonna get your hips back so the femur is vertical, right? Now, the last thing which can affect the femur is a sway back posture. And this means that your hips are forward relative to your feet and relative to your shoulders. And as you can see, the problem is this femur. And that femur is forward, so it's driving your hip. It can drive your hip into more anterior pelvic tilt. Now, for some people, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to drive, doesn't seem to increase the anterior pelvic tilt, probably because they have some hip hypermobility, in which case they're actually at a risk for a different problem. But the goal with sway back posture, again, which I might note is usually associated with a flat back, but you can have anterior pelvic tilt with it, and it can make your anterior pelvic tilt worse, is to bring those hips back so your femur is vertical, all right? The last thing that can affect your alignment to correct your standing posture is you'll see some individuals that are here. So one of the things that hip flexors, which are usually a big contributor to anterior pelvic tilt, do is they flex that hip, right? They bring it up, but the same motion really is just bringing our torso down. So some people are here, and that's indicative of too much, too stiff, too strong and dominant hip flexion or hip flexors, which we do not want. So in this case, it's not the femur which is the problem, it's the torso. The torso should be vertical. All right, so here's the other weird thing. If you have like sway back posture, if you have hyperextended knees, you have hip hyperextension, you will think that that's normal and you're actually neutral, where in reality, you are not. So when you correct that and you bring it back, and let's say you're vertical and you're looking in the mirror, you're gonna feel like you're standing like this now. And you're gonna think, there's no way that's correct. I'm telling you right now, that is correct. Your brain's perception of where you're at was skewed so that it did not give you an accurate portrayal of where you're at in space. This feeling like this will actually be correct, and you're gonna have to do that and get used to it. So suck it up, use a mirror to actually check if you have any of these conditions, and just make sure that your femur and torso are both vertical. So now that we have a neutral standing posture with your femur and your torso, now we can go about actually correcting this tilt. Okay, so just because you don't have hyperextended knees, hip hyperextension, sway back posture, or some hip flexion coming from the torso doesn't mean that you've corrected your anterior pelvic tilt. We actually have to still correct that. And what we do, so if you found though that you were greatly improved, chances are you still need to do this correction though, because if you do the test, which in the first video, that should have revealed to you they actually do have anterior pelvic tilt, which means we have to be correcting it during the standing posture. So I want to assume that you had just simple short hip flexors in that first test in the first video. So what we do to correct that is we just gently lift up that front of the pelvis, and we're going to just gently squeeze our abdominals. We're going to squeeze our glutes a little bit. It's going to be a very gentle squeezing because all we're trying to do is just stretch out the hip flexor. Now here's the cool thing. Whenever you're standing, you have a chance to get out of anterior pelvic tilt and correct it. But if you're not doing these correctives when you're standing up, you're just reinforcing your anterior pelvic tilt and you're not helping yourself. You're making things worse. So again, we're bracing our abdominals, namely our obliques, which are on the sides, and we're squeezing our glutes slightly. And we're just making sure that we're holding that. We can brace, we're gonna breathe, we're relaxed throughout the rest of our body, okay? Now, let's assume that you had a core stability problem, so that towel was lifted out behind your low back in that first video. So in this case, I want you to brace, and we're gonna brace a little bit more strongly, okay? We're gonna try to get this pelvis just rotated up. I don't care if your pelvis gets level or not. We're not necessarily going for that, but I wanna see it increase. You know, if you're here, well, I want to see it increase to there at least, okay? We're looking just for an increase of the front of that pelvis coming up. I'm squeezing, I'm bracing a little bit harder now using my glutes and my obliques and a little bit of the front, but mostly the obliques and the glutes are what we're going to be using to correct our standing posture. Now in this case, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to be squeezing them using anywhere from a 2 out of 5 out of 10. So if you just had hip flexor shortness, we're just going to do a gentle squeeze, and really it's going to be about a 1 or a 2. But if you had weak core stability where the towel came out, then we've got to brace these a little stronger because we have to stiffen this up here, okay? Now, here's the cool thing, is that our bodies are amazing at adapting. So if you're practicing this for a couple weeks, to probably a couple months, your body will adapt and your muscles will become more stiff. And so at first, if you had to really brace to get up here and you had to really try hard, you'll find that it gets easier and easier to do that. It's because your muscles are getting more stiff and they're naturally supporting you in this position. So that after probably 6 to 9 months at the most, you're gonna find that you're naturally hanging out in a neutral position. Now, how do you know if you have or don't have anterior pelvic tilt? Use the test in the first video. And if you find out you don't have anterior pelvic tilt, you don't have to do the standing correctives. I don't want you to develop a super flat back where you're here. We do need a nice little curve here, so don't overdo it. Retest again, make sure that you actually get out of the anterior pelvic tilt, but you're probably gonna have to put a little bit of work into it. Like I said, for most people, it's gonna be weeks to a couple of months before they start to see a noticeable difference or eventually get out of anterior pelvic tilt completely. So let's now correct your walking posture. Now the walking posture is very similar to how we correct the standing posture, but the walking posture is a little different, right? Now the similarities between the walking posture and the standing posture are that we're going to be bracing through here. But remember when I said that when the leg goes back, it can drive anterior pelvic tilt, making it even worse? Well, that's what can happen with walking. So we really need to be braced through here. So again, there's nothing wrong with building up your core stability. You can help build core stability while you're walking, but you have to be braced, okay? You have to be, like I'm punching, if I were to just give you like, a light punch in there, it's gotta be tough. It's not gonna affect you. We're breathing while we're doing that, all right? The difference between standing and walking posture are the glutes. So when we're walking, whatever leg is going back, that's the glute I'm squeezing, all right? So I'm gonna be squeezing right glute, left glute, right glute, left glute. And you might be wondering, why don't I just squeeze the glutes the whole time? Well, unless you wanna be walking like a zombie, then trust me, you wanna be able to make this seamless, natural, and feel like you can walk swiftly while maintaining good posture and getting out of anterior pelvic tilt. So to do that, you're gonna practice very slowly at first. Again, squeezing the glute that's going with the leg that's going back. So left glute, right glute, left glute, right glute. All the while I'm bracing through here. The goal is neutral pelvis. Also, if you're taking longer steps, that can drive or make it harder to maintain a neutral pelvis. So I want you to walk with some shorter steps at first, all right? We're kind of relaxing the legs, okay? The leg muscles we want to keep off because the hip flexors are down there, but we want to be squeezing the glute for the leg that's going back. And the glute also drives us back too. So it's both supporting and stabilizing our pelvis, and it's driving us back, which it should, so you can be a more efficient walker too. So the last thing we're going to get into is the sitting posture. Now there's a lot of things that can go wrong with the sitting posture, which we're going to go over. But the cool thing about the sitting posture is that as long as you set up properly, both it's got to be at home, wherever you eat, and your car seat, as long as you set those things up properly, you're probably going to be okay, but it's going to take a little bit of investment to ensure that you have the proper setup. And once you do, you're going to, again, get out of anterior pelvic tilt instead of reinforcing. So let's go over the mistakes that can happen when we sit down. If I were to ask you to completely relax, all of you would just simply hunch over and just roll onto the floor. So there's obviously muscles that are activated when we're sitting. We tend to think of sitting as being kind of passive, we're not doing anything, oh, sitting's really bad for you. Sitting's not necessarily bad for you, but unfortunately, the muscles that allow us to sit up properly are the exact ones that drive anterior pelvic tilt. And that's why anterior pelvic tilt is so huge, is because we're often sitting too much though, okay? Then if you transition from sitting for a while, like you went to school for 12 years, 12, 16, 24 years, whatever you did, and then you stand up, well now your standing posture assumes anterior pelvic tilt, which reinforces that. So if you probably went to school and you got anterior pelvic tilt, you're gonna have to work to get out of it. So what we gotta do with sitting is we're actually making sure that the muscles that drive anterior pelvic tilt, the hip flexors, if our hip flexors weren't up, we would just go down, and then our low back, if our low back wasn't on, we would just fall to the ground. We have to make sure those muscles are supported as much as possible. The first thing that you're going to notice is that there's nothing behind me, all right? And what that does is it ensures that my low back is working extra. But if I did have something behind me, okay, this, then I actually get more support through the pillow versus my low back muscles, and that can allow me to relax and not have such dominant low back muscles, okay? Now the other thing that can happen is that if you look at the side view of how I'm sitting, my hips are kind of more flexed than they should be. So actually, this femur here should be more horizontal and it shouldn't be upright. As you can see, the more upright that it is, the more hip flexion that I'm going into. So if you happen to be really tall, chances are you need to be seated a little bit higher, or you're gonna have to have your legs out, which isn't necessarily the most comfortable, but as much as you can, try to have your femur be horizontal with the ground. that's going to decrease the demands on your hip flexors so they don't stay in such a shortened position. And this is the other thing. Most couches, ironically, are made for people that are about 6'5" and higher for their torsos, but they're made for people that have legs who are about 5'4". So furniture to sit down on doesn't make any sense. I'm not talking ergonomics. I'm not saying you have to get like a specialized chair or anything like that. I'm just saying our furniture in the industrial world does not make any sense. So what that means for a lot of you is that if you happen to be really tall, you might not need much cushion. But if you happen to be shorter, you're going to need even more cushions, okay? Because your torso won't reach the back very much. You're going to need a lot of filler behind you to make sure that you are supported in your back area, okay? Consequently, the lower chair that you have, you can also think about sitting on that. You can think about sitting on something, and this gets you upright. You're gonna feel, oh wow, yeah, I'm more loose here, okay? And it's a lot better. Now, there's some things that you should watch out for, and one of them is gonna be avoiding bar stools. These are obviously terrible and horrible for the back because there's zero backrest available at all. The other thing is deep couches. Although there's some cool designer couches, they're sleek, they're modern, they're crap for allowing you to rest your back. So you're gonna have to use a ton of cushions behind you. I'm 6'2" and I still use like a double cushion behind my couch. First, you'll probably be a little self-conscious like I was, but once you get used to it, you don't think about it anymore and it's just normal for you. So if you got something out of this video, please subscribe to my channel. Or if you have any questions at all, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks for watching.